All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to go over the sinking of the Titanic, what happened and things like that. And then we're doing something a little different. On your paper, you're going to see at the very last page, there's no questions on there. You're going to see that. When we get to there, I'm going to explain to you what your assignment's going to be, okay? So let's go ahead and go to the warm-up picture. There it is. All right, so the first question asks you what's happening here. All right, so write in the complete sentence, what is happening? The second question asks you, based off your analysis and what you've previously learned about Titanic and things like that, maybe what you've heard, what you've seen in a movie, documentary, or whatever, what is wrong with this picture? Okay, now remember, this picture was created years and years and years ago, you know, probably 100 years ago. And they heard a different story, which we're going to be talking about, than what actually happened and what we know now today, thanks to modern technology and things like that. Okay, so again, go through this picture. In class, most people we found like three errors. There might actually no four. I take that back. We found four. So if you can find three, awesome, good job. But if you can find all four, that's good too. All right, it's really really good. Okay, so pause the video, write your response. Okay, because we're moving on in three, two, one. Okay, so on April 10th, 1912, the RMS Titanic leaves Southampton, England. When it leaves, it has 2,224 crew members and passengers. Okay. Now, this ship was truly wow at that time. You know, it stood 175 feet from the bow, from the bottom to the top, 175 feet tall. That was wow back then. And more impressive, it was 882 feet from one end to the other. So, I mean, it was a mega ship. Nowadays, we do have bigger ships, and things like that. But back then, that was like, oh my God. And that's why they nicknamed it, the unsinkable ship, because they were like, nothing this big could ever sink. All right. Now, this guy right here you see in the picture, that is Captain Edward Smith. According to popular belief, this was supposed to be his last voyage. He was supposed to take Titanic on its maiden voyage, and once he reached New York, that's it. He was going to call it a career. The reason why I say that it's by popular belief is because there's no actual physical documents, nothing written in a journal or a letter to his, you know, sister, mother, friend, or whoever saying, hey, after this is my last, trip and things like that. He didn't write anything like that. And this was mainly said after the Titanic sank. So it's hard to say if he actually was going to be his last trip because he was in the captain's ships for years. So it's hard to say yes that was going to be his last one, you know, or people were just saying that to romanticize the fact that he passed away and that this might have been his final one, you know, type of thing. Now there were some important people on that ship. Number one is J. Bruce Ismay. He was the White Line director. Okay, the company that made the Titanic. He was on that ship. Thomas Andrew. He was the Titanic's designer. So if you watch the movie and you see that guy with the blueprints after the iceberg had been hit, and he's like looking through the map and explaining everything. That's him. Thomas Andrew was that guy. He knew that ship like the back of his hand. And so when everything went down, he was the one who said, yeah, we're going to sink. Because he knew already from what he was hearing and what reports said what's sinking. Yeah, he knew. Okay, this is going down. The next big person was Margaret Molly Brown. She was a millionaire, but the thing is, she was newer money. She wasn't born rich, and a lot of these rich people on there, they were brought up rich. They acted so snooty and just so proper. And she's a down to earth kind of gal. She's like a person you could chill with. She wasn't born into money. She just came upon it later on in life. So she's like, "Hey, what's up? How y'all doing?" And everyone, all the other women are kind of like very just, oh, oh, oh. But when things went down, she grabbed hold and she was like the one telling the girls in the lifeboats, "Hey, ladies, come on, let's do this. Let's get an oar. Let's row. Come on." She had that leadership and had that oomph in her because again, she wasn't raised to be proper ladylike. She was, hey, get things done. You know, that's the kind of woman she was. The next one was John Jacob Astor IV. He was probably probably the richest man on that ship. And yes, like the movie does point out, he did have a younger woman with him who was his mistress and pregnant. So yeah. This other person, Francis Millet, was a famous painter. Um, was on that ship as well. And Isidore Strauss, who was the co-owner of Macy's, the shop, the store where you get your clothes and shoes and things like that, cologne. Um, yeah, the co-owner, the original co-owner, was on that ship and passed away. Now, the average first class ticket costs about £23. Okay, nowadays, money that'd be £2,497, which is in our US dollars, $3,265. Now, the most expensive first class room, the ones that had like multiple rooms, had a balcony area, things like that, those rooms costed £870. Um, in modern days, that'd be £94,460. And in today's US dollars, that would be about $123,000 um, for that room. Yeah, quite a bit of money. Now, one of the things I hear a lot too is people say, well, how is there pictures of the Titanic if everyone on there sank? Did the cameras, survive? No. Here's the thing. Titanic didn't just leave um, Northampton and just take off. No, no, no. It stopped off at two places: Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland. Now, in Queenstown, Ireland, there's a Jesuit priest who's actually a trainee named Francis Brown, and he was a avid photographer. He liked photography, so he was taking pictures and things like that. So if you watch the movie, there's like a part where you see this little boy playing with a top, and there's like an old man right there looking at the kid. That's actually from a picture that Francis Brown took. He actually took the picture of a boy playing with the top and an old man near him. So in the movie, they're trying to pay respect to Francis Brown, the picture he took of an actual little boy who was on the Titanic. Um, so he took pictures of the captain, the crew members, the rooms, and things like that. So that's how we get those pictures. And that picture up on top supposedly is the last picture of the Titanic because once Brown got off on Queenstown, he turned around, set up his camera, and took a picture of the Titanic before it left. Okay. And that is supposed to be the last known picture of it to exist. Now, what you hear in the movies and the myths and some of that is true that Captain Smith ignored the warnings of icebergs. Okay, he got messages saying icebergs, we've spotted iceberg, this such and such location, things like that, from other ships around the area. Now, again, Captain Smith is a veteran captain. He probably figured, hey, I can navigate through this. We'll be able to see it before it's anywhere near us, things like that. Okay. The myth is that Captain Smith tried to get to New York like a day early. You know, here's the two problems with that. One, Titanic was going to stop off at another place before New York. Okay, so if they stopped off at the other place early, wouldn't that kind of be the surprise right there and then, and not New York? The second thing is it's a passenger ship. They are telling people you are going to be, dropped off in New York on this time, on this day, around this time. So if they went a day early, that's kind of putting people at an inconvenience. You know, that's like if they, hey, tell their family, hey, I'm going to be in New York on Friday, so the family's going to be there on Friday. If they show up on Thursday, what are they going to do till Friday? You know, that's something they didn't plan on. So that is not a, that's no, that doesn't make any sense. So that's why that myth, it doesn't work. Okay. But on April 14th at 11:40 at night, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lead, they spot an iceberg straight ahead of the ship. They ring the bell, they give the call, and First Officer Murdoch then gives the order to, stop the engines, go reverse, and to try to steer around the iceberg. Um, but the thing is, the ship is too big. It's so massive. There's so much momentum that the ship is just going fast and that it can't stop. So, like I gave the example in class, if you're on a hill and you're going down, and it's a steep hill, you know, um, chances are you're not going to stop right in the middle of the hill. You can't because you're going to be like keep going. Your momentum is going to take you. Or if you're running as fast as you can, right? Let's say you're trying to run the 40-yard dash. You're trying to run. You don't stop exactly at the 40-yard. Your momentum keeps taking you past. Even though you slow down, even though you stop running, your legs are going to keep going because that's the slowdown. That's the momentum dying out after you pass that 40 yards. So if you ever watch football and you notice, hey, when these guys run, they don't just run as fast as they can and they just stop right there exactly where they are. Because again, momentum. And that's what happened with the ship. It has too much momentum, it's too big, it's too heavy, and it's got so much power that it can't stop, reverse, and turn all at once quickly. You can't do it. Now, here's the thing. Before, in the early days, people thought that the ship sunk because of a 300-foot gash. We now know that's not true because we now know that, hey, first off, there's no big hole in the Titanic as we see. Okay, there's not a big hole. It's a bunch of little gashes all the way across. That's what tore through. That's how water got in and started making the boat sink. Excuse me. Also, bad thing was there weren't enough lifeboats. There wasn't enough lifeboats for everyone. Um, and the thing is, they only had enough for a third of the passengers. Now, why did that happen? Why did they do that? Because where the boats were to be stored, they felt, oh, that's too much clutter. And this is where the first class people can walk through and things like that. So if we have too much boats, oh, it's going to be so ghastly on the eyes to see all these lifeboats and things like that. So that's why they took out a lot of them so that the rich people could enjoy the view on the top deck. Yeah, I know. Um, Also, too, which I get a lot from students who watch the movie and things like that. How come those guys didn't fill up the boats? Didn't they know? Didn't they know that it can hold a lot of people? No, they didn't. Those officers were not trained in what to do if the boat started sinking. Because again, people were saying this is an unsinkable boat. It will never happen. So why train these guys? So they didn't train them. And a lot of those officers didn't know that those lifeboats can hold up to like 60 people. They had no idea. So they only filled up some of them with like 20, 30 people. Some only had like 15 because again, they didn't know. They thought maybe the boat might sink because there's too many people in here and things like that. So that's why those lifeboats were not filled. Um, Here's another sad thing too that's not really acknowledged and talked about too much. The third class citizens, the people at the very bottom, some of them were left to fend for themselves. There were some people who had the crew members of the ship, they closed the gates so that hey, the first class, second class people can get on the boats first, and then it'd be their turn. You know, not realizing that hey, the water is coming in fast. First it's slow, and then it's going to keep building up faster, faster, faster. They didn't know that, and some officers left their gates open. They said, you know what, hey, if you could survive, survive. They weren't going to hold them back. Here's the problem. Again, that boat is 882 feet, if I'm right, long. There's different gates all over. And not everyone speaks English. There are some people who are French, some people who are Italian, some people who are Middle Eastern, and they can't speak English. So if you watch the movie, there's a guy looking at a sign. He's trying to look in a book, trying to translate it, things like that. Because again, he doesn't know English. So even if he found a place, he might be saying something like, things like that, trying to talk to people. They don't know what he's saying, and they're fighting for their life. They're probably scared. And he's probably like, trying to probably tell him, hey, there's a door open here. Come over here. This way's easy. They probably didn't understand him. You know, so that's the thing with the third class citizens. A lot of people did not speak English. A lot of people are confused, scared, and that's a bad combination. April 15th, 2:22 in the morning, the Titanic sinks into the sea. All right. Now the thing is, it does, tilt completely like in the warm-up picture. The problem is, um, it breaks. There's too much pressure, too much strain is on the top half, so the middle part breaks and then it goes down. Once it goes down, the bottom part is still holding together, and so water starts filling into the front part. Starts filling up, filling up, filling up, and it brings the ship up completely, and there it dangles, and then the bottom part finally disattaches and it goes down at an angle, and it lands several miles away. Like I think it's like 2 or 3 miles away from where the bottom half falls down to, because it goes basically straight down. Just goes down and just like bah, once it hits comes upright, it just bah hits the ocean floor. Um, Here's the other thing too about the ship as it was sinking. If you've seen the movie, you've seen the band playing as the ship goes down. That is a true story. That is very true. There's so many eyewitnesses who heard the band playing as the ship was going down, as it was sinking, and then all of a sudden there's no more music, and that's when people knew those guys probably were already in the water. Now, speaking of the water, that water was 28 degrees. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but cold freezing is 32 degrees. So that water is below freezing. Now, in that water, being that cold, you can get certain things. Number one is cardiac arrest. Your body is basically into shock